if it weren't for the point about the Haitian pet recipes.
They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats.
The most memorable highlight of the first and probably only presidential debate between Trump and Kamala wasn't from the candidates at all. It was from the journalist moderators fact-checking to declare true and false live instead of letting the candidates, debate it. And instead of letting the viewer decide for himself.
Crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country.
Even if that moderator David Muir was right, which to the point of this video, he's not. But even if he was, there's still a philosophical flaw with that approach. Is the voter here to listen to the moderator, or is the voter here to listen to the candidate? Because to interfere with the candidate in this way is to interfere with the voter's assessment of him, and thus it is to exert influence. At that point, you aren't just facilitating the voter to make his own decision, you are directing that decision, or at least trying to. And the supposed democratic principles we constantly hear so much about demand the opposite. Power in the people, not power in government or corporate media centers. And that's best case scenario, where the journalistic fact checker actually gets it right, where the substance of the fact check is actually correct. But of course, that's the other problem with this approach. Even a well-meaning live fact checker is imperfect. Some falsehoods go unchecked, and some true things get wrongly declared false. So it's not just taking power away from the voter, it's misleading him astray, too. But hey, that's not malpractice. That's just standard journalistic practice at this point. It's not just don't believe that candidate. It's don't believe your own experience or intuition either. And that's especially common within the theme of this fact check, crime. In February, NPR published a legendary article questioning your unsophisticated understanding of the issue. Headline, "Violent crime is dropping fast in the U.S., even if Americans don't believe it." FBI statistics show a big drop in violent crime in 2022 and 2023, but polling consistently shows Americans believe that crime is getting worse. So what's going on? And the answer, of course, is that you idiot rubes are too stupid to read the data and too easily manipulated by politicians trying to scare you, so you believe untrue things about your own surroundings. But there is another explanation that isn't entertained. What if the data are inaccurate? What if the authoritative source of the FBI isn't as automatically authoritative as this premise assumes? Shouldn't we at least consider the possibility that the FBI is wrong? Probably. Because the FBI is wrong, not according to me, just some idiot, unsophisticated rube incapable of observing my own surroundings, of course, but according to the FBI, which means we have to believe them. They determine the fact checks, after all, because the data revision has struck again, this time uncovered by crime researcher John Lott, writing at Real Clear Investigations this week. Last year, the FBI reported in their supposed final crime data for 2022 that the violent crime rate fell by 2.1%. That stat was part of the basis for articles like NPR's and fact checks like the one in the ABC debate insisting that crime is down. Now there's a revision, but apparently a stealthy one, because the FBI didn't make any formal announcement about this update. The press release summarizing a new year of data makes no mention of any significant change to the last one. But there is a significant change. They just buried it, snuck it into some ambiguous language in a footnote of a 40-page summary of their crime report. Oh, hey, by the way, the 2022 violent crime data has now been updated to include some other data. No further explanation, just one sentence about including new information. Well, what change might the inclusion of more data make then? Because one would assume that including more violent crime data might mean a higher violent crime rate. Yeah, exactly. So instead of that 2.1% drop in violent crime, 2022 actually had a 4.5% increase, according to Lott's analysis of the newly included numbers. Now, of course, data updates do happen. Oftentimes, initial reports are preliminary or estimates, even though this particular report was supposed to be finalized. But the point is, adjustments in government reports are common. So the question is this type of adjustment common? No. Not at all, say the researchers included in Lott's report. A College of William and Mary criminology professor says he checked the FBI's violent crime data from 2004 to 2022. There were no revisions at all in the decade plus between 2004 and 2015. From 2016 to 2020, there were small adjustments totaling less than 1% each, but this huge change, again, totaling nearly 5%, isn't something that's ever happened before, and it's especially odd without an explanation for what happened. Another quoted crime researcher says it's up to the FBI to explain what they've done, but of course, they're not doing that. The FBI did not respond to repeated requests for comment for this story. And it's not just what did the FBI do with this data adjustment methodologically. It's also how did the FBI miss this much crime in the first place? When we hear a 4 or a 5% difference, we might not know what that means in raw numbers. It's a lot. The FBI's update means there were about 1,700 more murders, almost 8,000 more rapes, 33,000 plus more robberies, and over 37,000 more aggravated assaults in 2022 than initially believed. And of course, not all crime is immediately reported or ever reported, so perhaps that explains some of the difference, but certainly not all of it. Murder is effectively always reported, so how did 1,700 just disappear? Car theft is effectively always reported since insurance claims require police reports, so how did thousands more of those cases just disappear too? And the deception of this presentation, the media reliance on this particular FBI report and the stealth edit of it later, is really only half of it, because even if we assume that the Justice Department and the FBI are authoritative and reliable with crime data, the FBI's crime statistics are only half the picture. They are one method of measuring the issue based on reports from law enforcement. But of course, not all crime gets reported to law enforcement for a variety of reasons. Hesitation to speak with police, or sometimes police being totally unavailable, a significant current factor given the understaffed state of so many police departments. So when we measure crime by police reports, we aren't necessarily measuring all of it, and we can also measure crime by asking victims. And so the DOJ does that annually as well. They survey 250,000 people a year about their own personal experiences, and the differences are massive. In 2021, the FBI crime statistics reported a 6.6% drop in violent crime. The crime survey found a 13.6% increase. In 2022, the year the FBI initially reported a 2.1% drop in violent crime, now revised to a 4.5% increase, the crime survey found a 29% increase. In 2023, the FBI reported a 3.5% drop in violent crime. The crime survey found a 4% increase. And yeah, the crime survey has methodological problems of its own. These are self-reports from people who may not be truthful. As far as I'm aware, there's no accountability for them if they lie. But it's the same sort of methodology we use for public opinion polling or surveys about other types of personal experiences too. In those contexts, we consider these methods valid and reliable. No measure is perfect. This is just one. The point is, even if we assume that the crime survey numbers are high and the FBI numbers are low according to their own revision, the truth is somewhere in between, and they still average out to a smaller crime increase, or best case scenario, crime staying flat in recent years, which means elevated compared to prior years, at least with the most serious crime. For all the talk of a dropping violent crime rate, the current murder rate is still about 10% higher than it was before COVID and all the other nonsense of 2020, even if you rely on those trusty FBI numbers. And of course, even if we have any courtesy left for these government agencies to believe they're just making mistakes and not intentionally lying, well, these mistakes are getting pretty common, and it's awfully funny these mistakes only seem to work in one direction, to the political benefit of the federal government and the White House in particular. Because remember, at the end of August, around the same time that these crime numbers got revised, the jobs numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics got a similar drastic revision. Oh, hey, you know all those awesome jobs we constantly brag about, but never quite sound real?
We have created nearly 10,000 million jobs since President Biden took office.
Well, it turns out they aren't real. overestimated. By about 10,000 million jobs, actually, or about 818,000 to be a little more precise. But the better part of 1 million jobs they bragged about creating never even existed at all. They were nothing more than a figment of DC bureaucratic imagination. And likewise, that was the biggest downward revision of preliminary jobs estimates since 2009. Now, you would think, with all of these years of practice, that their methods would get better, more refined, more accurate. Instead, they only seem to get better at serving political needs, a common theme in DC. Does the bureaucracy actually exist to serve Americans with the truth and justice, or does it just exist to serve itself and preserve its own power? That question is not even necessary. They answer that question convincingly with their own consistent behavior. And to the extent that major media is just an extension of that bureaucracy, their premise is that the bureaucracy determines the truth. Well, that explains their behavior too. Why does NPR marvel about how wrong you are about your own experience with your own life? Why does debate moderator, fact checker David Muir cite crime statistics only as reported by the very government center he's supposed to question, not obey, which turned out to be wrong, as he'd discover if he actually did question them, and not as reported by the people he's supposed to inform? Why does his colleague, Martha Raddatz, believe that she knows the story better than the people who actually experienced it?
Senator Vance, I'm going to stop you because I know exactly what happened.
It's because the corrupt alliance between the bureaucracy and the media watchdog turned lapdog has betrayed the purpose of representing and informing you. Instead, their purpose is to control and manipulate you. And I'd like to believe otherwise, but every story they produce is as told by the government power center. You're wrong, they're right, unless you prove them wrong, in which case they're still right. It's just they made a very lucky mistake to their own benefit just this one time. Well, at least the number of people who believe that presentation continues a trend downward into historic lows, according to polling. More people have no trust in media at all than have a great or fair amount. And the even better news is that is probably an artificially high number too, also manipulated through preliminary estimations to be revised downward later, because after all, what is the more preposterous number? 10,000 million jobs created, or that a third of us still believe these people? Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on X, that is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chatting my live streams. Those are live on Wednesday and Sunday nights. Looking forward to it. Come on.